and became insensible. When he returned to himself, it was some time before he could recollect his scattered faculties; and when the agonizing consciousness of his terrible situation forced itself upon his mind, he had nigh relapsed into oblivion. He arose. He rushed towards the door. He knocked against it with his knuckles till the blood streamed from them. He scratched against it with his nails till they were torn off by the roots. With insane fury he hurled himself against the iron frame. It was in vain. Again he had recourse to the trap door. He searched for it. He found it. He laid himself upon the ground. There was no interval of space in which he could insert a finger's point. He beat it with his clenched hand. He tore it with his teeth. He jumped upon it. He smote it with his heel. The iron returned a sullen sound. He again essayed the lid of the sarcophagus. Despair nerved his strength. He raised the slab a few inches. He shouted, screamed, but no answer was returned, and again the lid fell. "She's dead!" cried Alan. "Why have I not shared her fate? But mine is to come, and such a death! Oh!" And frenzied at the thought, he again hurried to the door, and renewed his fruitless attempts to escape, till nature gave way, and he sank upon the floor, groaning and exhausted. Physical suffering now began to take place of his mental tortures. Parched and consumed with a fierce internal fever, he was tormented by unappeasable thirst, of all human ills the most unendurable. His tongue was dry and dusty, his throat inflamed, his lips had lost all moisture. He licked the humid floor. He sought to imbibe the nitrous drops from the walls, but, instead of allaying his thirst, they increased it. He would have given the world, had he possessed it, for a draught of cold spring water. Oh, to have died with his lips upon some bubbling mountain's marge, but to perish thus! Nor were the pangs of hunger wanting. He had to endure all the horrors of famine, as well as the agonies of quenchless thirst. In this dreadful state 3 days and nights passed over Alan's fated head. Nor night nor day had he. Time, with him, was only measured by its duration, and that seemed interminable. Each hour added to his suffering, and brought with it no relief. During this period of prolonged misery, reason often tottered on her throne. Sometimes he was under the influence of the wildest passions. He dragged coffins from their recesses, hurled them upon the ground, striving to break them open and drag forth their loathsome contents. Upon other occasions he would weep bitterly and wildly, and once, only once, did he attempt to pray. But he started from his knees, with an echo of infernal laughter, as he deemed, ringing in his ears. Then again would he call down imprecations upon himself and his whole line, trampling upon the pile of coffins he had reared, and lastly, more subdued, would creep to the boards that contained the body of his child, kissing them with a frantic outbreak of affection. At length he became sensible of his approaching dissolution. To him the thought of death might well be terrible, but he quailed not before it, or rather seemed, in his latest moments, to resume all his wonted firmness of character. Gathering together his remaining strength, he dragged himself towards the niche wherein his brother, Sir Reginald Rookwood, was deposited, and placing his hand upon the coffin, solemnly exclaimed, "My curse, my dying curse, be upon thee evermore." Falling with his face upon the coffin, Alan instantly expired. In this attitude his remains were discovered. End of Chapter 5, Book 5.